just type into the chat box at the left bottom and I will try to fix it. So this is the first webinar of our of this year. It's about urban biking. I'm very happy that so many of you could join, and let's have a look at the agenda of today's webinar. So we will start with 3 presentations, which are each about 20 to 30 minutes long. Richard Armitage from Manchester Bike Hire will start with his presentation delivered by Bike Psychologistics. There will be a 10-minute discussion break afterwards where you can ask immediate questions. After that, Oriol Liévaux and Josep Canals from the city of Sabadell will talk about managing plan of bicycle of Sabadell and bike-friendly actions. Again, there will be a 10-minute discussion break. And the third presentation will be by Billy White and Michael King from Clicks and Links about virtual reality biking. There will again be a 10-minute or discussion break afterwards, and then we will go immediately into the general discussion round where you can just ask any questions you have and where we can just discuss with each other about the topic of urban biking. The entire webinar will be recorded, so you can have a look at it and download it at our Triangulum website at our website at the webinar section. So if you missed anything or would like to have another look at the presentations, that's no problem. Okay, so for your information, participants are not able to speak because I think this would create a lot of chaos if all of us are speaking at the same time. So if you have any questions or would like to say something, please just use the chat box and we will see how that works. Okay, so the first presentation will be by Richard. I will make you a presenter now and then you can get started and turn on your audio and have your presentation. Okay, Richard, you can start now.
Hello, can you hear me? Right. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm utterly unfamiliar with GetResponse, so you'll have to be patient with me. Right, good morning. I'm Richard Armitage. I have met some people from Sabadell before. I'm not sure whether it's the same colleagues. If it is, good morning. If it isn't, hello. I am the director of Manchester Bike Hire, and Manchester City Council has commissioned us to operate the Triangulum electric cargo bike on loan scheme. And I have a leaflet about this which I can send to you. I can describe it briefly. It is very simple in practice. It can be quite difficult to effect. So what we've done is we've got a range of electric assist cargo bikes available that businesses and organizations operating in Manchester can borrow for up to 3 months to try out. In English, we say it's try before you buy. The idea is that they can see whether the cargo bike actually helps them with their operations, no matter what they do. And we look as though after 2 years, we've got our first big success happening. And I think it's quite revealing who has found this useful. Lindsay is the residential accommodation manager for University of Manchester. And as you can imagine, the student accommodation is in different parts of the city. It's not all in the same place. And she has no desire to bring her car into the city centre. It's much easier for her to commute to work by public transport. But once she gets there, she needs to go between the different student accommodation sites. And she's been doing this on foot. She's done it jogging. She's done it on an ordinary bike. And she's been doing it by taxi and sometimes by public transport. And it all takes a long time. And carrying the paperwork that she needs to carry around is quite awkward. So we've lent her an FR8 Work Cycles cargo bike, electric assist, with a large cargo bike box on the front of it. And she has found this ideal and is now going to her managers and saying that she and her team want to have one of these bikes available for their use, and that it will make them much more efficient. It'll give them a bit of exercise during the day, and it will, of course, be environmentally sensible. So what I'm going to do now is leave that Triangulum bit for a moment and come back to it at the end, and just briefly go through some thoughts about delivered by bike and what it means. And then, obviously, I'll be very pleased to take some questions and comments. So here's some pictures of the bikes, but I say I'll come back to that in a minute. And now, what's happening in Manchester at the moment? Well, here you see Ellen and Dave with the driver Glyn from DHL Express. The riders are from Last Mile Manchester, and we deliver parcels from DHL Express in the city centre in Manchester. And we're doing about 10 to 12 drops, parcel drops per hour. And DHL in their van in the same area of the city centre, it's very congested, are able to do about 6 or 8 drops per hour. So in other words, this is entirely a business proposition. This is a commercial arrangement because we can be much more efficient than the van. In fact, DHL Express and their colleagues in the logistics industry, in the last mile world, they know in advance that their city centre operations are inefficient. Why do they know that? Well, because many years experience, but also they recognise it and acknowledge it by having the van leave the depot only quarter full. It's quite common for vans like this to leave the depot quarter full because they know in advance that the driver won't be able to deliver a full load in the day. But it's not just the last mile, it's also collections in the first mile of a parcels journey. And then there's the only mile, which is deliveries that happen within the city boundaries. And we contend that a lot of these can be done by a cargo bike. There's lots of different bits of this market. It's quite complicated, it's quite complex. And recent research, which I regret to say I intended to try and read before today, I haven't had time. Recent research shows in the UK that the growth in so-called white vans, small vans like this, is enormous, and it isn't all about parcels. There's a lot of other reasons why people are using these vans. But cargo bikes also provide an opportunity for small businesses. Here we see a coffee cart, and that's Coffee Cranks in Manchester. and they're able to offer their services on a mobile basis and do it very efficiently and get into nooks and crannies in the city that may prove to be difficult to get there by car or van. And certainly at Manchester Bike Hire, we're beginning to help small businesses set up with appropriate cargo bike facilities, and that's beginning to look very interesting indeed. So the different kind of services that we've seen on cargo bikes are quite varied. And certainly when I was in Vienna last year, I met a window cleaner with a very large, very lightweight trailer behind his bike, full of his ladders, and he's been doing his window cleaning in Vienna, towing everything behind his bike for over 15 years, and is having a very successful business. And then, of course, the third sector that's interested in cargo bikes is for domestic and pleasure and leisure. And this is a genuine photo. It's not a fix. I know the guy. He's taking his kids to nursery and primary school in the morning. He's got his own kit and some of the kids in his Otley panniers on the back of the bike, and the children are in the back seats in the front, and off they go. And it's one less journey by car to school. I don't know about your own countries, but in the UK, the school run, the taking of the children to school, particularly primary age school children, is done a lot by car in the UK, and it is adding as much as 20% to the traffic volumes at that time of day, particularly in the mornings. Now, of course, the cargo bike can be multiple use. And one of the things that's proving quite interesting, especially in places like Denmark, Netherlands, and Germany, where cargo bike use is more advanced, is how on earth do you store securely the cargo bikes? And sadly, we do have to emphasize the secure bit, as the thieves have begun to realize just how valuable cargo bikes are, and cargo bike theft is now quite common in places like Berlin. Now, the world of cargo bikes is not all plain sailing, or in fact, as I say here, easy riding, because in the UK, we've had, like many colleagues in mainland Europe, we've had a lot of growth in the use of young people, mainly on bikes, delivering food. Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat, Domino's, there's a whole load of people trying this. And certainly in the UK, this has been done with scant regard for the employment conditions of the people involved. And all I can tell you is that at Last Mile Manchester and Manchester Bike Hire, we pay wages properly and the social security, and they get their holidays and their sick pay and their pension. But unfortunately, we're being let down by companies far bigger than us, who make all sorts of ridiculous claims about flexibility and so on. In practice, what they're doing is they're paying as little as they can get away with, and none of the people you see in this photo have got any long-term prospects whatsoever in the industry in which they're serving. Last April 17, I visited the Amazon Prime City Centre warehouse in Berlin, where at that time the company Go, you can see in the photo, were using 3 electric assist cargo bikes to make deliveries as part of the range of vehicles and vans and other equipment that they were using to make deliveries in Berlin. But the very first thing that we saw as we entered the warehouse, going onto the shelves that were the shelves designated for the cargo bike operators, was a 6-pack of 2-litre bottles of water, 12 litres of water, going to be delivered within 2 hours through Amazon Prime. And I just felt that there wasn't much to recommend that. It seemed to me that it was a business model that conflicted with all sustainability goals, when in fact all you need to do is turn on the tap to get fresh water. Then it seemed to me that here the environmental benefits of cargo bikes were being completely negated by the business they were being asked to perform. I'm also very concerned that the Deliveroos and Ubers of this world remove enormous value from the local economy because of their platform business model, taking anything up to 35% of the gross value of the transaction, and that leaves much less to be invested back into the local community. So I think we've got, in that particular arena, we've got quite a lot of problems to think about. So on with the main message, which is that zero carbon, zero emission deliveries are available in your area now. The great thing about what I've been talking about today is that it can be done very easily, very quickly, and straight away. Now, let's be clear, I'm not making any false claims for cargo bikes. We are not the solution for air quality problems, noise, congestion, and so on. What we're saying is we are part of the solution. And we're part of the solution that can get going pretty fast. And so the Cycle Logistics and Final Report 2017, if you want a copy, there's a web link at the end of this presentation, demonstrated that 1 in 2 motorized trips involving cargo could be going to bikes, and 25% of urban commercial delivery can be by bike. And you don't have to go in at just one way. The technology that's available, yes, there's bikes, but there's also now trailers, there's cargo bikes, there's cargo trikes, there's with or without electric assist. There are actually some quite different solutions. And to go back now for a moment to the Triangulum electric cargo bike loan scheme, what we've discovered is that one of the lessons is that we've got to go and see in person, face to face, the organisation or business who've got in touch and said they'd like to try something out, because we have to have an understanding of what it is they need to do in their business operations in order to give them the right bike or trailer or cargo bike or electric assist to suit their needs. It has to be tailored to suit their needs. From a point of view of municipal councils like Sabadell, Manchester City, it's great that much of this can be implemented without subsidy and without huge amounts of financial or other kinds of support from the city, because much of it is completely commercial. Having said that, I would note that in Vienna, in Austria, last year, 2017, Maria Vasiliakou, the vice mayor with responsibility for transport and the environment, actually authorised 700,000 euro to be set aside for their cargo bike subsidy scheme. Now, this wasn't subsidising the operations, it was a subsidy to help people buy their first cargo bike, whether this is a family or a small business. Similarly, in Berlin in April 18, Regina Hunter, who is the senator at the Berlin Senate with responsibility for environment and transport, announced at the European Cycle Logistics Federation Symposium in April that they are going to put aside over the next 2 years 800,000 euro to subsidize, just like Vienna, the purchase of cargo bikes by families and small businesses. And the aim of both of these schemes is to kick-start cargo bike operation, to give it a really big boost, to make sure that it is visible in the city. And certainly the Berlin scheme is only just starting, but the Vienna scheme has been very successful. During the Triangulum scheme in Manchester, the Chinese bike share operator Mobike arrived with its dockless hire bikes. And these hire bikes need to be repositioned. And initially, all the collection and reposition was done by diesel van. And Manchester Bike Hire was involved with repair and repositioning. And we offered Mobike the opportunity to do this by bike towing a trailer. This is a German-made Carla cargo trailer with 3 wheels. We've put an adaptation at the front where the bike wheels can be slotted in. And we're able to get 5 23-kilo bikes onto this trailer and move about very easily in the city centre. Somehow I've skipped a slide because here we see an older trailer we used on the left there. James is towing that. We could only get 4 Mobikes on that. And unlike the Carla Cargo, which you can just see in the crates on the right arriving from Freiburg, the Surly trailer we used to start with had got no overrun brakes, whereas there are disc brakes on all 3 wheels of the Carla Cargo trailer. You can also get the Carla Cargo trailer with an electric motor in the front wheel, so it can be towed by a bike, an ordinary bike. The point about all of this is to say that innovation is happening very fast in the world of cargo bikes, and there are a lot of exciting and interesting things happening. A lot of ingenuity is being applied to the technology, and this ranges from looking at containerization, and it's also about standardization of parts to improve how repairs are effected, and also there's technology involved in the actual logistics. At Manchester Bike Hire, we're exploring with a Maltese software company called Ascent Software. We are exploring a cloud-based and mobile phone app-based logistics solution for our customers, where they can order deliveries and drops online, and it all appears on our riders' mobile phones, and that's underway right now. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you deliver by van and the driver feels that they either are entitled to park in the cycle lane, or they've had bad training, or they're just having a very bad day and couldn't think of what else to do. But this is in the middle of Manchester. It happens far too often. I'm often asked what should happen. What should the local council do to help cargo bike operators, to help cargo bikes become established? And one of the things that local authorities can do is something to do with the cycling infrastructure that's available. This cycle infrastructure is, in my opinion, very poorly designed. It's in the middle of Manchester. It's just outside the Palace Theatre. Sadly, it's very recently built as well. It was only opened last year. And I can promise you I have to go down this route quite frequently, and this photo happens all too often. So the cycling infrastructure is the thing above all that the city needs to invest in to make cargo bikes a success. Well, that was a very quick canter. I happen to also be a director of the European Cycle Logistics Federation. We've got a lot of material on our own and other websites that are listed here. And obviously you've got my email at the bottom. It's disappeared a bit in the reformation of the PowerPoint. But anyway, Bettina knows where I am as well. And you've got my phone number there. And I'll be very happy to talk with you afterwards, as well as take any questions you've got now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. This was really interesting. So if there are any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat box at the left bottom, and then maybe Richard can answer directly to them. And of course, there will also be some time after all three presentations. So if you want to first think a little bit about the presentation, we can also discuss any questions you may have at the end of the webinar.
Yes.
Okay, so for the moment, it seems like there are no questions. I just have one question. Maybe I will ask it directly. What about the hire periods? Is it, I mean, I'm sure that the simple bikes are maybe just for one-day hire, but I think especially the small businesses, they can hire them for longer periods, right?
Yeah, I'm going to write this as well. The hire period on the Triangulum scheme is up to 3 months notionally. Usually it's easy for people to find out. Sorry, I've done that now. It's easy for people to find out in 3 months whether or not it's working. But also we've been able to lend bikes to a new business, a pizza and public house business on the edge of the university campus, to help them get going. And because we had capacity, we were able to do that, and they've had a longer hire. But in some instances, people have a go for a day or two and immediately make their minds up either way, you know, that it's not for them, or that in fact it's exactly what they want, and off they go. So it really hinges on the complexity of the operational requirements that are needed. The residential accommodation manager that I mentioned, Lindsay, her arrangements are very straightforward, and so it's been very easy for her to decide that she wants one permanently. But if you go, for instance, to the University of Manchester Taste Manchester Catering Company, they've got a separate catering company for the university. It's a very large university, and the catering company is a standalone company. Their requirements are very complicated, including the need to carry food that is chilled, as opposed to food that's just going around at the ordinary temperature that's available. And there are environmental health legislation rules around the carriage of food like that, that's going to be consumed naturally, quite rightly, and all of that adds complexity. And so they've found it quite difficult to get their heads around how to use a cargo bike.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. So I think there are no more urgent questions for the moment. So thank you very much, Richard. Oh yeah, actually Gabi has a question. Can you tell us a bit more about your partnership contractual agreement with Chinese loan bike company Moonbike?
Hi, Gabi. Good morning. Well, yes, but it's not strictly to do with Triangulum, by the way. This was separate to Triangulum. But briefly, Mobike chose to come to Manchester as its first adventure in Europe. They had not set up in a European city before, and last June 2017, they came to Manchester. And they hired us to do repairs initially, and then gradually we got involved with repositioning and collecting up the bikes that were damaged and so on. We operated for them for 10 months. We finished on the 23rd of April. And during that 10 months, we ended up at peak with 25 staff. and at no point did we have a proper contract, unfortunately. And in the end, we decided to part company with Mobike because we didn't really agree with how they were operating. And we wish them every success, but we're no longer involved.
Okay, thank you. I know Gabi is typing.
It said you were typing, Gabby, but what I would say, Gabby, is that if you want to talk offline about that, just get in touch. I'm very happy to discuss it further.
Okay, thank you. So thank you again, Richard. I will put you back to being a participant, and maybe we go to the second presentation, which is by the city of Sabadell. So I will make Oriol and Yosiba a presenter now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just short introduction. My name is Uriol Llevot from the city of Sabadell, from the innovation section. I'm actually the head of this section, and I will do the first part of the presentation, and then my colleague Josep Canals, which is the advisor for the public space department, will do the second part. Now we already have the presentation in front of your screens normally. Can you just, Betira, confirm me that the sound is correct? No, I don't see it.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so I just start, as I said, I will speak for around half of the time, and especially focusing on the managing plan of bicycle of Sabadell, which is the most let's say urban planning part, and then Josep will focus more on the practical actions which are implementing this plan. So first, as there are people who are not of the Triangulum project, to say that Sabadell is a city located 25 kilometers north of Barcelona. So we have here this metropolitan area of Barcelona, and we are just here, one of those tentacles. It's a city of more than 200,000 inhabitants, and it has a surface, which is important for the purpose of biking, of around 37 square kilometers. Sabadell is, as I say, very close to Barcelona, but at the same time is one of the capitals of this Vallès County, this Vallès corridor. So it's very influenced by Barcelona, but at the same time, it also has a capacity of attraction of cities and towns nearby. So it has this double hat, which is always complex to manage. Just some geographical details to say that Sabadell is quite a flat city. You see here in the map that most of the streets, most of the area is less than 2% slope. So this makes it very comfortable for biking, for internal mobility, and also for mobility to other towns nearby, as you can see in the map. The city has been working in already for quite a long time in defining pathways or walkways which connect the more green lands in the nearby with the city center. This is the map you can see. And then when we come to analyze the mobility in internal mobility in the city, we see that there are around 500,000 daily trips. We see that we have a strong weight of soft mobility. So 62% of mobility is what we would say soft or not motorized. But out of this 62, we only have 1% bike. So it's quite a contradiction that we have a flat city, but for the moment we don't have a big share of bike mobility. So that's of course why the local government saw a clear opportunity of improving these figures. We see that, for example, when we talk about connection with other cities, not internal mobility, but connection with other cities, only 15% of it is done by train. This means that when Sabadell people go to other cities, they use more, or they rely more on private cars. And at the same time, you see in the map that there is an opportunity for connecting these areas surrounding the train stations with the train station. So we see that here there is a clear potential for bike lanes that connect to the main train stations in the city. The situation now regarding the bike lanes that have been already built is the following. We have only 37 kilometers of bike lanes. The model has been that bike lanes are on walk sides, so they share the public space with pedestrians. They are not mixed with cars. And there is a small share of bike lanes who are in the pavement or in the peri-urban natural paths. As I said before, we have some green spaces surrounding the city, and there are also some bike lanes in a natural environment. You can here see how this looks like in specific pictures. You see the walk side, and you see the bike lane just next to the walk side. And you see, for example, in one of the pictures, this old lady, which is just passing by the bike lane, which is sometimes a problem also for security reasons. Most of our bike lanes actually are not exclusive for bikes. They are shared with, as I said before, with pedestrians, or we just put a sign on the pavement defining a 30 kilometers limit speed, which means that this pavement is allowed for bikes, or is particularly suitable for bikes. So it's not actually a bike lane. It's just limiting the speed on the street for facilitating the circulation of bikes. You can see here the map with the existing bike lanes. This is exclusive bike lanes. And on this cake, you see the overall areas which are somehow where bikes are allowed to circulate. So we move from the 37 kilometers to a 237 kilometer network. But as I said before, this includes many streets where there is not a particular bike lane. It's only like introducing the 30 kilometers speed limit. So this is the situation now. There has been already quite a long history in planning. There was in 1991 the first plan of cycling in the city of Sabadell. And then in 1999 there was the first managing plan regarding bicycles, which allowed or which gave the opportunity to build the first network of bike lanes. We have also to, when designing the bike network, of course, we have to take into account the infrastructures that are surrounding it, and especially to favor intermodality. So that is the interurban and urban bus network, and the train networks, or even in our case the airport of Sabadell. I explained a little bit the situation that we have at the moment, which is not, as I said, satisfactory, but there is a strong plan to change it, and to change it fast. We have these 8 goals and a clear roadmap to increase this share of bike mobility. We are now at 1%, and we would like to move to 5% of the mobility share for bikes in 2020 and 15% in 2030. So that is a considerable effort. There is also a change in the way the bike lanes are built. They will be no longer built on the walk sides, but on the pavement. They will share the space with the cars, of course, in appropriately secured bike lanes, and at the same time we reduce the space for cars. All that is to invert the mobility mix. Instead of having this pyramid where car is at the top, we want to just shift it and put the pedestrian at the top, and second, bikes. There will be 3 main actions which will be undertaken. First is to, of course, increase the number of bike lanes, develop a network of safe parking spaces, and Josep will talk about more, promote intermodality, and also offer some service of bike sharing, and also Josep will talk about that. Of course, there will be promotion actions also, dissemination, training, motivation, and fidelization of users. And from the management side, we see that is a crucial aspect, a good maintenance of the network, which is something that in the past could have been improved. As a result, what we have defined so far as a previous step to actually building this network is defining different uses, analyzing how bicycle can be useful for different purposes. First purpose is education, and we have designed and we have drawn this network just considering the schools nearby, and also the how can we make this the most secure routes for especially for young bikers going to school. Second network that we have defined is the work, for the purpose of work. And here we have analyzed in purple where the most important areas for business activity is located. Third is shopping, so the most commercial areas, how we can connect them by bike. And finally, nature and leisure. So this it means connecting the city center with the green spaces in the nearby. It's a big challenge. We have new bike lanes to be built in the coming years, so 134 kilometers. So we can move from the current network, which is the one in blue here in the map, to this one in orange, as you see. And combining or allowing these different uses that I just mentioned. So education, working, shopping, and nature and leisure. We see just now how the public space will change. We see that as I said before, that the bike lane will be located on the pavement, and the space for cars will be reduced. So instead of having 2 lane or 3, 4 lanes for cars before, we only allow 2 lanes for the cars. Just to before concluding, and I leave the floor to Josep, who will speak about some more specific actions regarding or bike-friendly actions. Just to say that when we have put in place participatory budgets, in the 2 years we have already done this, the most voted actions have been related to biking. First year it has been related to safe parking spaces for bikes, and this year it has been related to safe lanes for moving to school by bike. So we see that the biking is a topic that is very interesting for citizens, and that when we allow them the opportunity to decide how the money is allocated, they choose actions related to bike. And now, okay, Josep can speak regarding some of the big actions or bike-friendly actions we have in mind for the coming years. Josep. Can you, Bettina, just leave the voice to him?
Can you hear me? Hello? Hi?
Yes, Josep, we can hear you.
Yeah? Okay. Good morning to you all. I'm going to try to recuperate some way in my little English. Just to continue the words of and the topics of Uriol. Maybe one of the main ideas is maybe the previous author that he shared to us was how the public space will be transformed from now on. And yes, one of the first measures we have already done is construct the first bike lane, taking some space from the cars in order to avoid, thank you, Rio, in order to avoid the confrontation among two of the modes, two of the systems that we want most to protect, which are pedestrians and bicycle users. They don't have to share the same space. We have to stall steal, if you permit me, the space from the car in order to place the space for the bike users. Okay, I'm going to speak on 4 items. One, I would like maybe to recuperate. I just listened half of the speak of our colleague Richard Armitage from Manchester, but just to say that I was there with you in Manchester, visiting the Triangulum, the university, and I catched many of the ideas from there. And we are aiming to buy 3 electric cars, 3 electric little trucks, as you have there in Manchester, in order to have some agreement with the local organization of traders to make some public system to pilot in order to see what happens in our first implementation of distribution for last mile with sustainable vehicles. In that sense, we have chatted with a local enterprise, little enterprise, which is already making some distribution with cargo bikes. And they asked us if we could share some of the public market space. Oriol, maybe you can help me with al mercat municipal, how it's called in English.
Yeah, the local retail market, mainly for food, for buying food.
Yeah. We have in Catalonia some municipal facilities, which we call local markets, mainly, as Oriol said, for food, but in modern times we have some other kind of stuff that are selling there. And in the basement, there are all the spaces for trucks, for little lorries to bring the goods. And this small company, which is making distribution from some retails to the final user, to the final consumer, to their homes. They are doing it by e-cargo. No, e-cargo. But yes, e-cargo is electrical bicycle tricycles, 3-wheel bikes, and we are aiming to leave them some space with some rapid and open pilot procurement, something like that, in order to leave them some space in the public market, to help them to have an exchange platform to receive, to reorder, and to deliver their goods. I hope I'm making myself clear. Second is this photograph you have here. We have made a profound study to know what are the possibilities to implement safe parking for bikes. As Oriol said, is one of the ideas that won the participatory, the public budget, and also is part of our strategy for integrated and urban sustainable development, which is funded by the European Union. And finally, we have decided that after being studied some of the products that we can find in the market, as the 2 photographs that you can see here in this slide, we have chosen the left one, which is the model half pipe, half tunnel that the metropolitan area of Barcelona, which is just in the city limits from us, have chosen and have put in service for the last maybe 10 years, which quite success. Maybe we are going to put this in the procurement conditions that we want to accompany to execute. Well, we are going to attribute this procurement maybe at the end of the year, this year in 2018. We want to start with from 12 to 14 stations like this, mainly linked obviously to train and bus stations. We have 6 train stations and more than 100 bus stations, and we want to link the main bus and train stations to the bike in order to the users of the train to safely guard their bikes nearby the stations and take without concerns take the train in their everyday journeys. This is an investment of 70,000 euros for buying these stations, these physical cages, if you permit me to call them like this, and then 20,000 investment per year, not investment, but to pay the enterprise who will win the procurement to operate the system, the software, the cards, the apps, and all the maintenance that is required to give a good service. Secondly, we are aiming to install a public pool electric bike system, which we want to, in this case, not attribute, but begin to commence the procurement at the end of this year. We want to install at the end of the procurement 70 stations in which you can pick your public and electric bike. We want to our public system to be electric instead of having I don't know how to say it. We have a quite flat municipal, but instead of that, we want to make it electric, the public bike system. And it will be, as I said, 70 stations, also mainly linked to train and bus stations in an investment with a sum of 400,000 euros. This will be a service contract. We won't buy any of the bikes or any of the installation of the station. We will attribute to an enterprise who give us a service and who provide all the material that will be needed to give that service. And in order to that, just to finish, we have to, in this year, the rest of this year, we want to write down the 2 local rules to orders in order to regulate the relationship between the operators that will be attributed in both in the 2 contracts with the users, because there will be private material to a public service, but private material, private facilities, and we have to regulate the relation, how legally relate the users with the operating enterprises. I think that I explained all that I had in mind. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. You don't want to go through the rest of the slides? Did I understand it correctly? So we're done for the moment? Yeah? Okay, are there any questions? I just have one question. I will also type it into the chat box later. Oriol, you spoke about, at the beginning of your presentation, about 62% soft mobility, and you said those are non-motorized, and that only 1% is by bike. And I don't know if you mentioned it or I missed it, the 62%, which type of vehicle are we actually speaking about?
Yeah, so this 62% is by foot.
Okay.
Yeah, as distances are quite short, people in Sabadell tend to walk a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the main point. But we want to promote also, of course, bikes are faster, so this shift from foot to bike could be interesting. But especially what we want to focus is on moving polluting mobility to bike. That could be the main. 62 seems high, but still I think that we can do better in terms of reducing the use of car. There are still a segment of population that prefers to take the car even if it's for short distances. So that's the focus.
May I add? I would like to say that this is a percentage, a proportion of the mobility that is not rare in the metropolitan region of Barcelona. This proportion of 3 out of 5 or 70, between 60 and 70% of the movements, daily movements, daily trips are done in a pedestrian way, because the local people, the people that comes from the outside of the region, or even even in Barcelona, they come by public transportation, or most of them by private vehicle. But the people who lives in the city and makes the local movements from one dot to other inside the city, they do it mainly by walking.
Okay.
It's not rare, this number here.
Yeah.
And also in Bogota, for example.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank Oriol and Josep very much for your presentation. And I think we can continue then with clicks and links. So I will make Michael and Billy presenters now.
Michael.
Yes, hi Michael. Billy, do you need voice as well? You can also turn it on yourself.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hello.
can hear you.
Perfect.
Right, so I'm going to try and share my screen, so hopefully this will work. Can you see presentation?
Yeah, I can see it, Mike.
Yes. I assume that it's going to be hard to see the chat though in this. So I'm going to do it this way because the video didn't work when we used the other format. So I might have to tab to see the chat. Okay, let me start. So it's myself. I'll do an introduction to this. It's myself and Billy from Clicks and Links. And I noticed in the chat, Vin Sumner is also with us as well. So Vin's the founder of Clicks and Links. So I'll keep an eye on the chat if Vin wants to come in and say anything audio or via the text. So we've done a brief presentation. Here's the structure. So I'll do a bit of background as to where Clicks and Links came from and where we fit within Triangulum and something called a visualization platform, which then leads into our bit. We suggested our bit should go sort of third and last of the sessions here. So our bit is a bit more, what we wanted to do with this is basically share some ideas and so on. So we can share exactly what we've done, but where exactly this is going, as much as anything, we're open to ideas, really. So we'll share with you some of our ideas about where we think virtual reality bikes and those similar concepts will go. But we thought it interesting to share sort of where we've got so far, but interested to hear views and feedback from others, really. So ours is a bit more futuristic and conceptual than in this sort of series of presentations. So if I go on, so where did we come from? So doing some background, so Clicks and Links is an SME, and we're working in the Triangulum project, excuse me, so we're in the ICT stream within the project, and we report in University of Manchester leads the ICT work stream. And effectively within Manchester, the University of Manchester are responsible effectively city data. So there's two parts to the ICT work stream within Manchester. University of Manchester are developing something that we don't have time to go into here, but it's around pulling together city data and making city data available. And the bit that Clicks and Links are doing, our background and heritage is around virtual reality, augmented reality, and those sorts of similar spaces. And so we were interested in creating what we called a visualization platform. So the visualization platform was a concept about how, in very, very high level sense, how cities use visual technologies to interact with, understand, and gain insight from data. So going back to the structure of Triangulum, University of Manchester were developing the data side and pulling data in. And we were looking at how we could interface to that source of data as well as any others, really, and visualize it. But specifically in the first instance, so a visualization platform, in theory, can be any form of visualization, 2D or anything, really, GIS and similar things. But given our background, we were interested in how virtual reality, especially, could be used. So here's a few sort of screen grabs, really. These are the early versions of the visualization platform. So we use the HTC Vive, if people know that technology. And we use others, such as the Oculus, and our technical guys can tell you all about the different pros and cons of each. But what we seem to find is the Vive gives a better experience, basically. So the top left picture is someone wearing a Vive. So they have a sort of a headset on, and they have two controllers that allow them to do various things and interact. And the screen in the background, the picture there, what they see. So the early version of the visualization platform showed a map, a table. You were in a virtual room, and you could sort of explore a map of Manchester. The screen on the right shows someone zooming in, and we sort of have it highlighted in there in screen top right and bottom left, different buildings from the University of Manchester estate. So the bottom left one shows the John Rylands building, and when you could interact with that, you could see things such as the energy profile, the electricity profile over time, or the gas profile, and so on. But again, it's all trying to tease out this concept of how people use data visually in these sorts of virtual environments and so on. So don't have time to go into loads of detail on that, but we're interested in how you use them collaboratively with multiple operators, different lenses on data. So the top two and the bottom left pictures show us as a map-based view, whereas the bottom right is trying to show a more sort of schematic view of data. So if you think of, say, the London Underground map, that's not a sort of geographically represented map, but it's a schematic map. So again, it's this idea of different layers and lenses onto data and so on. So that was the history. The other project that's worth citing here is there's a project called City Verve, which is coming to a close now. It was a 2-year funded project, which was a UK innovation project around the Internet of Things. And effectively Manchester, it was led by cities, and Manchester won the bid. And there's a consortium of partners, of which ourselves were one. And again, we were keen as an SME, you want to try and sort of line up things so that your work is aligned to, so they get some leverage across things and so on. But what City Verve also helped us with is introduce some new partners. So we had a partner, Ordnance Survey, have been a very helpful partner. So they are effectively the sort of mapping agency of the UK. So they have sort of highly detailed maps in many different forms across all of the country, basically. So again, in our schema of underlying data, whether that's sort of map sort of type data, or whether it's laser scans of areas, or whether it's CAD and CAM models, that underlying data, we're then interested in how you present and make that available and how you can use that. So that's the visualization platform concept. And I think handing over to Billy as to how if you keep that background in mind about the visualization platform, Billy will then take us through sort of where the VR bike sort of came from. Over to you. So I need to. Are you muted, Billy? If you can hear me, I can't hear you. Let me check the text. Can everyone else hear me? Or have I been talking to my... Okay. I thought I'd been talking to myself for 10 minutes. Are you back, Billy? I can see you.
Can you hear me now, Mike?
Yeah, I can hear you. So I'll mute myself and I'll drive the slides for Billy.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, thanks for that, Mike. So hello everyone. My name's Billy White, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where this project started and the journey it's been on, and sort of where we're going with it really, and what we'd like to do with it. So yeah, could you next slide, please, Mike? Okay. So my sort of experience into entering into virtual reality was basically I started getting into 360 film and 360 photography in my final year at university. Now, this would sort of consist of me building a 360 camera rig and attaching it to as many things as I could, really, just to learn the technology. So I'd have it strapped onto a helmet, onto my car. I'd go for a walk. I'd cycle a bike. Now, this was all great. I'd sort of have this archive of 360 content. But I never really thought of putting it into virtual reality, exporting it that way and creating an experience. So I was sat there and I didn't really know where to go with this. And my degree showpiece was sort of, my degree coming to an end, and I needed something for my exhibition piece. And I basically thought, wouldn't it be cool if people could have a cycling experience? I mean, I've already got footage of me cycling my bike with a 360 camera on my head. Wouldn't it be cool if somebody could actually get on a sort of gym style training bike and experience my sort of journey, my cycle? Now, what I did was, like I said, went for a cycle and sort of exported it onto a phone so people could sit on a training bike and view it in a Google Cardboard. Now, this was brilliant. It worked. People were to some extent immersed, but there was a little bit of restriction in terms of the user's input, so they wouldn't be able to turn left or right. They wouldn't be able to speed up because they were essentially playing back a pre-recorded video. Now that sort of put me to a crossroads really, because my sort of technical knowledge couldn't take it any further than that. So as Michael was explaining about CityVerve, I stumbled across this project, and as I was reaching out for help, for technical advice, and then through that I found Clicks and Links, and my sort of journey with Clicks and Links started. I would come in 1 day a week, and they'd help me develop this project further to something that was far more experiential. If you want to next slide it, Mike, for me, please. Okay, so yeah, it would consist of me coming into Clicks and Links once a week for a couple of months, and then it would be a few times a week, and together we'd sort of work on this project. Now, the difference between what I had at first, where it was just a pre-recorded video, actually started to turn into something extremely experiential, where users could have complete freedom. They could, you know, they could steer left and right, they could speed up, slow down, and there wasn't just cycling through a pre-recorded video anymore. They were cycling through a point cloud scan of the city of Manchester provided by Ordnance Survey. Now this was great because, you know, you're cycling on the streets from a scan, so, you know, everything is to scale, and you really get a sense of immersion, like you're actually visiting the place. Now that was a sort of first iteration. Now further iterations of it, we can have simulated environments, so 3D models. We have a 3D model of Manchester provided by Arup. Now what we have with that is the ability to change the environment as you're cycling down. You know, we also have access to any city. So with that, we have an extremely powerful tool, but I'm sure me and Mike can go into a little bit about what we're trying to do with it further on in the presentation. But I think we've got a video to show you on the next slide, just so you guys can get a bit of a clearer picture of what we're working with. So yeah, if you want to load that up, Mike, that'd be great. Okay, so no, that's not the next slide. So this is the next slide. So this is the, yeah. Perfect.
Let me unmute myself. I believe Billy's just texted me saying I think the system has just thrown him off. So I don't know if he's rejoined, but I think it was due to hand back to me anyway. So I think, so what, conscious of the times. Let me pause that. Conscious of the time. So some ideas on where we think this is going. So we were going to do this between ourselves. I'll tap back to see, or if Billy gets back in, he can sort of contribute and so on. But I'll do these very quick, really. So if I quickly explain the video, what you were looking at in that video is different data views on Manchester. So if you saw loads of dots and so on, what that was a LiDAR, a laser scan. So, and where you'll see things, you obviously, when a vehicle had travelled down, Ordnance Survey had sent a vehicle down Manchester with a laser scanner on, and so obviously that laser scan, if it's done in a busy time, then it'll also hit vehicles and it'll hit passengers and all those sorts of things. But so that's one view on the city, which can give you a way of updating. So snagging is the terminology, is one avenue for that you can use that to see if anything has changed, basically. The other view was predominantly a 3D model. So effectively a representation of the city that was accurate with facades and images and so on. So people are more comfortable in the 3D model, but the laser scan can give you different elements of things to help you understand what's happening. So some ideas. So what are we doing technically at the moment? So we're looking to make the visual experience more realistic, and we're thinking about how we bring in audio and touch. Maybe you have a sort of rumble strip. So there was a device on the back wheel of the bike there that actually detects the speed that you're traveling and so on. So we're toying with whether you can sort of bring in some sort of simple buzzing in response to the road feel, whether you bring in some sort of auditory thing. The Vive has audio in its headset, so whether you try and bring in noise and so on. Bringing in external data is this second point. So one thing that we're hoping to do for a presentation on 20th of June is that we'll have the ability to link to external weather feeds, so that the weather within the virtual environment will link to what's going on outside. So if it's raining outside, we can make the virtual environment rain and so on. Similarly with light levels, about what it's like to travel at night, what it's like to travel in the daytime and so on. Some ideas we're thinking about is that you just to prove a concept really, that we might, as you travel along, you might see different buildings and they might be color coded in response to their energy efficiency. So this was an A to G rating and so on. Similar to that is if you saw when Billy looked down on the video, there's a sort of tab computer. So that's one of the controllers that you have in your hand. Basically, it's just on the front of the bike, and that can be configured to show anything really. So we're thinking about, we might link it to air quality. So as you cycle, there's a sort of red, amber, green view on air quality at that point on the journey and so on. And then the final point on here is a sort of what if and scenario modelling. So maybe you travel down this part of Manchester as it is now, and then maybe we reload that environment. We change the cycle structure and so on, the infrastructure in the virtual environment. So obviously that's a potentially really valuable exercise, because it saves all of the sort of cost of doing concrete and so on before you can test it in a virtual environment. I don't know if Billy's on. Feel free to interrupt me, Billy, on any of these other points. Are you there? Those I heard you just a sec. I'll keep talking anyway. Feel free to interrupt me. So these are just ideas, because again, I think it'd be good to try and draw this to a close. I think we've gone over our time. But engagement, you can see there's sort of many. Are you back, Bill? I think you've got a bad line. Engagement, consultation, communication, all those sorts of things and so on are avenues that we're interested to explore. These will be, we won't go through the detail in this, but there's just a few slides here that we've got on the website as well, I think, about how we think this could be used. So getting a load as a consultation exercise in somewhere like the library, potentially, for loads of people to give feedback.
Yeah, I'm back in now. Can you hear me? Okay?
Yeah, can hear you. Just chip in, Billy, because I think we should sort of try and see if there's any questions. I'll have to tab back to the chat in a sec. So, bike routes, feedback, consultation, anything like that.
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you, Billy. I think I'll end there. Let me stop sharing, because I think we can talk. There we go. I think that's done it. But yeah, Bettina, I think we're happy to take any other questions and so on. I'll stop the presentation because I couldn't see the chat while I was presenting.
Can you hear me, Mike? People.
Can now, Billy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my connection is so bad. Like I've just been dropping in and out. I'm sorry about.
That's okay, mate. We're happy to take any questions, Bettina.
Talking.
Yeah, thank you. I was kicked out of the webinar a few times, so I hope I didn't miss too much. You are done, as I understood, so thank you very much, Billy and Michael. Are there any questions? Then please type them into the chat box. And I think we can also open it up if there are any questions about the other two presentations by Sabadell and Manchester Bike Hire. Please feel free to ask your questions as well. Thank you, Michael. You have just posted a video link.
Hi, Orion. I'll answer audio and then I'll write. I think Vin's on the call, so it's better. I'll defer to Vin to give you a price if that's okay. But the short answer is we'd be interested to, to give you some idea. Yeah, and looking at other implementations, it would depend on how long and in what format it was being used and how long it was available and that sort of thing. Whether you wanted it yourself and what type of bike and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to have that chat, I think. Same thing, similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite, Richard. That's
Go on,
quite
Billy,
interesting. I think, one of the avenues we're looking at exploring with this is sort of cycle training and safety. Sort of safety perception in the city. I think it'd be quite interesting to have one of your cargo bikes and use it to cycle in the current infrastructure that we've got at the moment to really test it and see, is it sort of safe for cargo bikes? Yeah, if that answers your question, Richard.
Just point out Vin's answer as well, Richard, there. It sort of depends on, it's similar for Oriel as well, actually. It depends on availability of the underlying city data. So for Manchester, we have some parts of the city model. So you saw a section there for people who know Manchester from Oxford Road Station through to the town hall, but we don't have all of it. So again, that would we could look to build it, but that would add to cost. So if there's already city models available and so on, then that makes things easier. And yeah, training is the sort of thing that we're interested in, Richard. Some of the ideas are, how could you learn from more experienced riders who maybe would come to a potentially dangerous junction, and can they pass on their knowledge to more inexperienced riders to say, well, you always need to watch out here, and here are the risks to be aware of. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see you, Richard. Yeah, there are all the other sorts of things. Yeah, I think that's where the realisticness of the experience is interesting, because some people use the bike, and one option that we're thinking of adding is that you can just make the bike, you know, could go at 100 miles an hour in a virtual world, because you're just using it to view the city. Whereas maybe maybe using the bike as a real cycling experience is a different use case, and so on. Let me just check back on the questions. I don't know if that covers. I think it'd be good to have the dialogue, Richard. You know, they're all the training and so on is something that we're interested in, basically. Oriol, oh, okay, I'll look at that later. Thanks, Oriol. Gracias.
Yeah, and if you can hear me, guys, if anybody has any sort of further questions or wants to have further discussion about any of the sort of stuff that we showed you, just you know, drop me, Michael, Vin, an email, and you know, we can start a conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Yeah, they're all the sorts of things, you know, sort of how this informs city planning, you know, how it informs training. We had what's his name, Chris Boardman in, who's a former Olympic cyclist who has a role in Greater Manchester for cycling, promoting cycling infrastructure. So he sort of did a quick visit the other day, and it's, you know, they're all, it's all these sorts of ideas really, and how it's used. Any other questions, or Nancy Richards typing, or?
Yes, so maybe we just wait for those who are typing, if they have some more questions.
Thanks very much. Anyway, it was all helpful, that feedback. And Oriol, Vin says he'll contact you directly. He's on a phone dial-in at the moment, so can't really interact. I think we're done, Bettina, I think.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you all for participating. Thank you to the presenters for presenting very nice urban biking models. So it was very interesting. I learned a lot, and I hope all the others also had some new input. It was very good. Thank you. And as I said in the beginning, the entire webinar has been recorded and will be available to watch at the Triangulum website. And yeah, please all, if you haven't done so already, also sign up for our newsletter so that you can always get the latest information from the Triangulum project. And it was a pleasure. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, just send us an email. I'm available via remele@steinbeis-europa.de. I will just type that in since it was in German. So this is my email address, so I will correct it. The second one. If you have any questions or would like to get in touch with each other and are missing each other's email addresses, just send me an email and I will make sure to get you in touch with each other. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.